Good. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Amherst Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Today's date is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. We'll start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now I'd like to do a moment of silence to remember the victims of the Buffalo Top shooting, which was 2 years ago today. All right, thank you very much. In the event of a fire or other emergency, please follow the exit signs that are provided in this room and throughout Town Hall. Upon exiting this room, the main exits are located in the front and rear of the building. Do not use the elevator during an emergency event. This meeting is being recorded and streamed online. If you do not want to wait to hear the outcome of any given petition, you can call the town clerk's office tomorrow morning after 9 a.m. to learn the outcome if you choose to leave this meeting early. Can the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Bray?
Present.
Member Schubert?
Present.
Member Phillips? Present. Member Parker? Present. Member Gergen?
Present.
Thank you. We're also joined here tonight with the Town Zoning Enforcement Officer, Daniel Latowski, Assistant Planner, James Quinn, Town Board Member, Jackie Berger, and Deputy Town Clerk, Van Utman. Could I get a motion for the approval of last meeting's minutes?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And none opposed. Thank you. The first item on the agenda for 190 Sunrise Boulevard has been adjourned. We'll go to the next item on the agenda that is withdrawn, I'm sorry. The first item, 190 Sunrise Boulevard, has been withdrawn. The next item on today's agenda is 4220 Maple Road for a temporary use permit. Will the petitioner please come to the podium? Please write your name and address if you have not already, and please state that into the microphone.
Okay. Hello, my name is Lynn Ritchie. I'm one of the owners of Hamrell Amusements, and we are looking for a special event permit for the Maple Ridge Plaza, which will take place May 24th, which is a Friday, from 5 to 9, May 25th and 26th from 12 to 9, and we'll be leaving after that. There's a map. We will be in the northwest corner of Maple and Sweet Home. It's actually right behind the Taco Bell, and it's a perfect, we've been there before, it's a perfect location for the carnival because it's totally blocked in with curb all the way around. And I don't know if you have any questions or if I can answer
Does
anything.
any member of the board have a question? All right, thank you. Is anyone here in the audience to speak on this matter? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Does any member of the board like to make a motion?
Second.
Motion by member Phillips, second by member Gergen. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is passed 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on today's agenda is 159 Niagara Falls Boulevard. That is a temporary use permit.
That's an error. It's actually an area variance. The corrected agenda now reflects it as an area variance. Good evening, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Daniel Latowski. I'm representing this petition on behalf of the Town Facilities Department. The Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority is working with the town to establish 2 bus stops within proximity to the town's new pocket park. Originally, Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority was going to place both of these bus stops, bus stop number 1 along Niagara Falls Boulevard and bus stop number 2 along Kenmore Avenue within the road right-of-way. Had they positioned those bus stops within the road right-of-way, this matter would not be before you. However, after discussions with our facilities department and our highway department, which is responsible for maintaining this park, as well as the adjacent sidewalks, it was determined that the best location for them, particularly in the winter, was to place them on our property as they're shown here today. That would allow for an easier maintenance of the public walk along Kemmer Avenue and along Niagara Falls Boulevard, particularly in the winter months when there's heavy snow accumulation. So the reason it's before you is because now that it's on private property, they are deemed as structures and they must maintain the setbacks both along Niagara Falls Boulevard and Kenmore Avenue. James, can you go to the petition, please? The actual application, please. Would you go to the second page? Thank you. We believe that the character of the neighborhood will not be undesirably changed. The proposed bus shelters will be consistent with the character of the neighborhood, and they are a recognizable feature along most road corridors. Other alternatives, the proposed shelters, as I indicated previously, could be placed in the road right away, but the chosen locations makes it easier and more efficient for our town maintenance personnel to clear and remove snow, particularly in the extreme weather conditions that we have. The request, in our opinion, is not substantial, and the relief sought will not create any harm to public safety or the general welfare. Physical or environmental conditions, we believe it will not have a negative impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Again, these are recognized features generally found within the road right away, so the relief from the property line we don't believe will have any negative impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And the request is self-created. It was done out of need to lessen practical difficulties with the maintenance obligations of the town of Amherst staff that will be maintaining the premises. So with that, we respect the request that you consider granting relief for our project.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for Daniel Latowski? All right, is anyone in the audience here to speak on this matter? Okay, I'll close the hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion on this matter?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application of the area variances under Section 5-82B and Section 4-82.
That was a motion by Member Schubert, second by Member Parker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right,
Thank you.
very much. We're on the next item on today's agenda. That is 400 Worley Drive, applicant Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems, in regards to a special use permit related to a cellular antenna. Please make sure your name and address is written on the sheet on the podium, and state that into the microphone when you're ready.
Good evening, members of the Zoning Board. My name is Jared Lusk with the law firm of Nixon Peabody, representing Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems, commonly known as Verizon Wireless. Before you is an application dated April 16th, 2024, requesting the required special use permit and necessary waivers to allow Verizon Wireless to co-locate a wireless telecommunications facility on some field lighting to be installed at the baseball field at 400 Worley Drive. As you may know from our application, Verizon is currently co-located on the most famous water tank in America with lots of traffic going by on the Erie County Water Authority. Water tank, as you can see right here, the lease, Verizon's lease on that Water Authority tank expires very shortly. We're working on a very short-term extension of that to allow the project to continue, but we've been in negotiations with the Water Authority's commission consultant for the last year in an effort to try to extend the lease. It's pretty clear from those negotiations that a long-term extension of that lease is just not practical. Again, there's a lot of, it's very difficult for Verizon to maintain its antennas on existing water tanks. Since 2001, generally speaking, water tanks for homeland security reasons are much more protected than they are, and where they used to be a good marriage for operational and other reasons, they're just not. And in this instance, in addition to those, what I would say typical problems, the compensation, the lease negotiations, business terms of the lease were just so excessive by the Water Authority. Again, they'd hired a third-party consultant that, upon information and belief, is paid based on the revenue received, and became very difficult to negotiate a lease. That being said, we then have been in regular contact with the town supervisor. The town board have been really after Verizon in an effort to improve wireless telecommunications throughout the town, and have made many suggestions regarding town property where wireless telecommunications facilities could be installed and co-located. One of the ideas that the Supervisor Culpa and others had is that there was a desire to add field lighting to this facility. And he and the team, Verizon team, worked out a project here where the town is able to install much-needed field lighting for the baseball field, and Verizon is proposing to install one of the tower poles where the light's going on, and co-locating the antennas onto the pole that will also be used for for the field lighting. The pole will be 76 feet tall, with Verizon's antennas being installed right at the top of that pole. So we're paying for the pole. The upgrade of you can see it's here, this is an existing one-story, I would say, storage building for the Little League. We are proposing to build in a little fenced-in compound right here on the end for our equipment. The field light is right here. If you were to go up, there's field lighting. Well, I guess you can see it on the other plan, but there's standard, what you'd say, baseball field lighting proposed around the facility. Again, our equipment would be right here. In addition to the equipment compound, as I'll call it, we're also constructing, and again, sorry to ask you to go back, Dan, lower. You can see that we've also, in coordination with the town, are proposing to install a fenced gravelled area for general storage of outside baseball materials. So this is, in essence, a fantastic municipal project between the town and Verizon Wireless to both improve what's going on there as well as provide the field lighting. Again, Verizon is providing the tower light here, upgrading the electricity into the park to allow the field lighting to operate, and as well as this compounded area. Not including labor, the total cost for this pole, the upgrades, et cetera, is over $60,000. Again, that we're donating to the town as part of this, and in addition, paying rent on a monthly basis to have the project there. So it's a great, again, co-location use of resources. We've provided photo sims of the proposed use. If you can scroll through, again, you can see we've added all the field lighting, et cetera. You can see the existing facility and the field lighting, so you can see we're only installing the one pole that's a town project. That I understand that they've added it to the budget to get it in, but we're in a hurry to get the project started, et cetera, to get the field lighting installed.
All right, thank you.
As part of that, again, just to clarify procedurally, we need the special use permit, and there's two waivers. As in your wireless telecommunication code, the Zoning Board of Appeals is authorized to grant certain waivers to standards that are in the waiver code, in the telecommunications code. We've sought two of them. Typically speaking, a wireless telecommunications facility 500 feet from surrounding residences. As you can see, our project is 270 feet to the south and 280 to the west-northwest from residentially zoned property. In between there, of course, are the transmission lines and this road here. Again, it's a function of us, if we're gonna install it on the field lightings, we have to put them on the poles that are adjacent to the baseball field, as it works. So again, we're seeking a waiver of the 500-foot requirement to allow us to co-locate on the facility. And secondly, in the context of typical telecommunications tower installations, towers themselves, your code requires that the compound at the base of the tower have a fence that's at least 25% of the height of the tower away from the base of the tower. And that's for, in a typical wireless telecommunications tower, there's ice and things that are related issues. Again, this is different because it's a baseball light. But again, given the tight space here in the fence, we are not at the fence is not 18 feet from the base of the pole. Again, I think it's a technical issue, again, typically facing towers, but again, given the tight space, we need a waiver of that 25% distance between the base of the tower and the surrounding fence.
All right, thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
I just have one question. In addition to everything you're doing, as I understand, the license is for the initial license is for 5 years, and during that 5 years, you're paying the town $90,000.
I don't have the business terms of that.
$18,000 a year for
Correct.
for 5 years, and then
Yes.
it's automatically extends. So in essence, right away, the initial term is 5 years for $90,000
Correct.
to the town.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
And I don't have any questions for Mr. Lusk, but I just wanted to say for the record, I'll be recusing myself from this matter because Verizon is a client of my law firm.
All right, is any member of the audience here to speak on this matter? Okay, we'll close the public hearing then. We have to first issue a negative deck. Is there a motion on the negative deck?
Second.
Motion by member Phillips, second by member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Any noes? All right, that has passed 4-0. Would any member like to make a motion on the resolution?
Second.
Motion by member Phillips, second by member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
That has passed 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Did that resolution include the waivers? I didn't see that.
That is correct. We
thank
did
you.
list the waivers.
Thank you very much.
We're on the next item on tonight's agenda. That is in regards to 4795 Sheridan Drive from RAS Development. In regards to an area variance, will the applicant please come to the podium? Please write your name and address on the sheet on the podium and speak it into the microphone.
Hello, I'm Rob Savarino, RAS Development. My address is 4785 North French Drive. Sean Hopkins is representing me in this matter, and he, 10 minutes ago, told me he was 10 minutes away. He was coming from the town of Tonawanda. Now, if you know Sean like I know Sean, that means he'll be here in about 6 or 7 minutes.
All right, we'll go to the next item and we'll.
Thank you.
We'll hold this up.
Yeah, I looked at the order on the, it had 4795 as the last item, so I don't know if it was adjusted.
Apparently Sean Hopkins is representing the next one as well, so.
Oh, is he? Okay. Thank you.
Let us take a 5-minute break then.
Thank you.
I have some papers I would like to give to each one of you. Can I do it while you have your break? My name's Kathleen McHugh. I live at 64 Tennyson Terrace, and it's regarding the next one.
Well, we're going to talk about the next one in a couple of minutes, so why don't you just wait until then?
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Sean Hopkins be the only person I would do this for.
Yeah, right. Hand it on the next one.
Sorry, everyone. I would note for the record, the latest I was ever at a zoning board of appeals meeting in Amherst was 3:10 a.m. Believe it or not.
Well, you're street close tonight, so,
So good evening, Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, RAS Development 1 LLC. Also with me is Rob Savarino. We're here this evening in connection with property located at 4795 Sheridan Drive. Just to acclimate everyone, this is located on the south side of Sheridan Drive. You can see we're in close proximity to the Park Country Club and the condominium project that is located between the project site and the Park Country Club. This site consists of approximately 2.06 acres. It is properly zoned multifamily residential District 5 pursuant to the town zoning map, and there is an existing driveway connection onto Sheridan Drive today. Next slide. Copy of the zoning map, and you can see we're one of those two parcels that are highlighted in blue, which are zoned MFR5. I'm here. Also, you can see the Park Country Club a short distance to the east. It's also important to note that you see that yellow area connecting to Sheridan Drive. That's a National Grid utility right-of-way that has high tension lines, continues to the north, and I believe goes all the way up to Lewiston. Next slide. What are we proposing here? So what we're proposing is, oh, there it is, 2 multifamily buildings here and here. The one that's located on the northeastern portion of the site, that's a 4-unit townhome building, 2 stories. The building that's located here is a 3-story building, which we'll show you elevations in a second, consisting of 22 units. We would also note there is an existing single-family home located on the parcel directly to the west. While it's zoned MFR5, meaning that use is not typically what you'd see in MFR5, the house is there. So what we're proposing there in terms of screening is a 6-foot fence, intensive landscaping. We can work with that neighbor in terms of what that landscaping would be. And we're also showing a single-story garage along that portion of the site with 9 bays. We've found in the past, in connection with other projects in the town of Amherst, that garage actually serves as a screen as well. So the goal would be to have ample screening from where there's probably the most activity, the parking area, in front of the 2 buildings. And we will comply with the town's high-impact landscaping requirements. All of that will be worked out in detail during the site plan approval process. Oh, and I do want to note, I misspoke. So the larger building is 2 stories on the front, meaning what you'll see from Sheridan Drive is 2 stories. And then because of the grade of the site on that portion, which we'll show you in a minute, it's 3 stories on the back. So there'll be some walkout units on the back side. But this is the appearance from Sheridan Drive. The MFR5 zoning code allows a building height of 35 feet. The mean height of that particular building with a residential style roof is 33 feet. We could actually do a lower building with the flat roof, but we think a flat roof in that particular location would be less compatible with the character of the area. Next slide. That's the elevation plan for the 2-story townhome building with attached garages. Both of these color renderings have been prepared by James Fahey. He's an architect in Rochester. He's worked on numerous projects throughout Western New York and Monroe County and has a very good reputation. And as you can see, we're not proposing something that I would say is a typical multifamily building. We're showing something that has a lot of vertical and horizontal relief, high quality materials, a lot of windows. This is a nice site located in a good area. So we think we can justify that extra cost in terms of these buildings. Next slide. What variances do we need? We'll walk through these one by one. We need a front yard setback for building number 2, which is a smaller building. That's based on a mean roof height of 25 feet. We're proposing 26 feet, 26.6 feet. We need a side yard setback for building 1 from the National Grid utility right-of-way at 27.65 feet. We're asking for a variance to allow 26 units versus 20. It's important to note 21 of those would be 2-bedroom units, 5 of them would be 1-bedroom units. And then finally, we're asking for a minor variance for on-site parking buffering directly in front of the buildings, and that would be at 8.67 feet. One of the reasons we're asking for that is we need to make sure we can accommodate fire trucks on the front sides of these buildings easily. Next slide. That illustrates the first variance. So this is obviously the 2-story townhome building as measured from Sheridan Drive. Next slide. Area variance number 2, side yard setback of 27.65 feet as measured from the utility right-of-way for National Grid. Area variance number 3, number of units. Again, we're showing a 2-story from Sheridan Drive, 22-unit building, and then a 2-story, 4-unit townhome building located on the northeast portion of the site that will include attached garages. It's important to note in terms of that variance, why? Why are we asking for that variance? Well, this site does come with some not unique challenges, but challenges that we don't see elsewhere necessarily in the town. First and foremost, you probably all know this, Ellicott Creek is the back border of this site. This is actually Ellicott Creek. Many of you who play golf or been to the golf course know it flows through the golf course. You can see the contours here. So it gets fairly steep. As you drive down along Sheridan Drive, it's tough to tell, but if you go to the back of this site, you really can't even tell you're along Sheridan Drive. So that is going to require some extra costs in terms of foundation design, building design, but we can accompany that or build that into our model. It's also important to note that the back portion of the site has what's known as a regulated floodplain and regulated floodway. While you can ask for a floodplain permit in the town of Amherst, our preference is to avoid that in its entirety. So we're not proposing any impact within the regulated floodway or the regulated 100-year floodplain. And then, of course, as we indicated, part of our site that's actually adjacent to the utility right-of-way is in an easement. That area can't obviously be developed because National Grid has those rights, exclusive rights. They do not allow buildings and generally prefer not to have parking in that utility corridor. So that brings us all the way down to a developable acreage of 1.2 acres. Next slide. I already mentioned the grade. Again, 28% is at a 15-foot deep slope grade, that area that Rob's highlighted in yellow. And so because of all those reasons, we have some additional costs. Those, along with the enhanced architecture, ultimately, we think 5 additional 1-bedroom units, justifying those much nicer looking buildings, provides ample justification for that variance. Next slide. And then finally, area variance number 4 pertains to the proposed vehicle use area on the front side of actually it's building 1, which is here, 8.67 feet. Mr. Ulatowski, I believe in our updated submission, we may have referenced that we needed that on both buildings, but I think we only need it on building number 1. So I want to make that clear. That measurement is 8.67 feet. I would also note there is a 6-car garage that's attached to the building here. You can actually pull into that garage and then go into your unit without going outside. So that's a nice amenity with respect to those 6 units. Next slide. So obviously, in connection with any request for area variances, it's governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria set forth in New York State Town Law, Section 267, B3B, which requires you on the one hand to balance the benefits that will be received by the applicant if the requested relief is granted and weigh those against any resulting detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. Here the benefits are clear. This will allow us to move forward with this project in accordance with the design we're showing you. And I do want to note for everyone in attendance, this would not allow us to start the project. The next step is onerous. We have to do our fully engineered plans, have a separate hearing in front of the planning board, and get all of the wide assortment of outside approvals as well. On the other hand, we don't think there are any detriments associated with this layout. First criteria is whether the granting of the requested relief will result in undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties? No. I would note, again, we recognize there's a single-family home located directly to the west. None of the relief that we're requesting pertains to that side of the site. We're focusing only on the east side and on the front side. We're going to comply in all respects with respect to the west side. And as I indicated, Mr. Savarino, who's been involved in many successful projects in the town of Amherst, would welcome the opportunity to meet with that particular neighbor and work out the specifics of landscaping, fence type, et cetera, et cetera. Criteria number 2, whether there's any feasible method that would allow us to receive the benefits we're seeking but avoid the need for the requested relief. And the answer is no, and I think we've provided ample justification for that, both this evening and within our application. Next slide. Criteria number 3, whether the requested area variances are substantial. And the key inquiry there is whether any harm will result. We do not believe any harm will result from what we believe are minor variances. Criteria number 4, whether proposed variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. We did submit a completed Part 1 of the full environmental assessment form with our application. I've mentioned the fact we're not proposing any impacts to the regulated floodway or regulated floodplain. We've talked about the appearance of the buildings. So I think we have ample justification for that to be answered no. I do want to note for the record, Mr. Ulatowski has made us aware that the site is potentially archaeologically sensitive. Our project engineer has uploaded information to the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation website, and we acknowledge prior to beginning construction and probably receiving site plan approval, we'll need a clearance letter from SHPO. And then finally, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, and obviously that criteria by itself cannot provide justification for a denial. We're aware of the zoning code. We would ask you to at least recognize the physical constraints on this site in terms of the steep slopes, the floodplain, the floodway, the utility corridor, and the utility easement. So with all that being said, we are respectfully asking you to do 3 things this evening. Number 1, issue a negative declaration. Number 2, and I believe, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, we're asking you to issue a waterfront consistency determination, or is that through the plan department?
We built that into the negative declaration,
Okay,
Sean.
that's built into the negative declaration. And the reason why that applies, it's something new. The town of Amherst has now adopted a waterfront revitalization plan, and obviously we fall within the jurisdictional area because the back end of our site is Ellicott Creek. And then we're asking you to grant the requested relief. I will summarize the seeker review because it is something you need to consider this evening. I've mentioned the EAF. This is an unlisted action. I mean, generally speaking, it's not a relatively large project. We've submitted the waterfront assessment form. We've talked about community character in terms of the appearance of the buildings. We've talked about the fact that this project will require planning board approval, and probably most importantly from the perspective of interested property owners, in connection with this project, we will have to provide fully engineered plans, including an engineer's report, a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and we'll have to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the town's engineering department that that on-site stormwater management system can handle a 100-year storm event and that it's adequately cleaning runoff so that contamination doesn't go off-site, or maybe even more importantly here, into Ellicott Creek. So we're very familiar with those requirements. All of that hard work will begin if we get the requested relief we're seeking. And with that being said, of course, we would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you may have. Thank you.
My question is, have you had any conversations whatsoever with the property next door?
So Mr. Savarino, I believe, did drop off a letter with copies of documentation, but no, we've not had formal communication. I'm not sure if that particular resident is here. I would note if they are here, as we move forward with this process, obviously we'll engage directly. Mr. Savarino, perhaps more than any developer in Amherst, does that again and again.
All right, does any member of the board have a question?
I have 2. One, I'm going to ask Mr. Ulatowski. I'm very impressed by these elevations. If we approve these variances, are these the elevations that we're going to see, or can they be changed in the future to something else?
Technically, the petitioner can change his or her building design. You're simply looking at the dimensional relief and the quantity of units that he is seeking. At the time that the application is submitted to the planning board for site plan approval, the developer could propose flat style roofs. and alter the design. So if that's a concern, you can certainly ask that there be some commitments that the design be consistent with what's being presented or substantially consistent.
And the question I have, Mr. Hopkins, are these going to be rentals or condos?
Yeah, these are for lease. These units are for lease.
Okay, thank you.
So I do want to note, in terms of architecture, we actually met with several architects. Rob ultimately selected Mr. Fahey because of this building design. We'd be okay with you imposing a condition saying generally consistent with the renderings we presented. I do want to note, these are now renderings, full elevation plans, floor plans, et cetera, will be required as part of site plan approval. But yes, this is the goal in terms of what we're looking at. Rob, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and I've actually, I did previously. I did use Jim Fahey on a project on North Forest. It was a 3-story building. There were 2 26-unit buildings and 1 38-unit building with similar fenestration and exterior materials.
And that's located on North Forest near Audubon.
So same architect, similar features. It's just 2 stories as opposed to 3.
And that project's been very well received.
Absolutely.
It is full.
All right, is there any more questions from members of the board?
With the shorter setback from the road, is there going to be any problem with sight lines?
No, can we go back to that particular slide? I think it's variance number 1. There we go. So no, that building is set back 26 feet from the right-of-way, and then there's also some ample room within the right-of-way, so it will comply with the town's what's called clear vision triangle requirements. All of that will be verified. The planning department looks at each and every aspect of the code. It will be verified, but it does comply.
Any other questions? So any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Please come up to the podium. Please write your name and address on the sheet on the podium if you have not already, and say that into the microphone when you're ready.
Hi, my name's Carrie Wanamaker. I live at 4775 Sheridan Drive, so two houses down from the property that we're speaking of. I'm speaking to request that the board does not consider the variance permitting an increase in the number of maximum units, the bedroom allowable density for the property. Building a 26-unit apartment on such a confined space, which I now find that is 1.2 acres of actual buildable space, it seems a little absurd and would result in an excessive number of residents on one property in an area that's currently consistent of single-family homes. The residents were currently surrounded by natural serenity of Ellicott Creek in the rear of the building, but the congestion on Sheridan Drive is a major concern if another 50 cars will come in and out of where there's only a turning lane and no signal. A big concern should be the danger that multiple residents using that one turning lane in and out of the property could jeopardize the safety of the neighbors, including myself, my children, and other residents along this stretch of road that's already a little bit dangerous. So also noise pollution of an additional 50 to 100 individuals living on such a tiny proximity to the house next door. In addition to the light pollution that would occur from not only the structural lighting, but the parking lot lighting as well, will definitely disrupt the natural beauty from our peaceful environment. I'm concerned that an apartment building rather than condos, has the potential for more of a transient resident base, and that could be pretty concerning if people are moving in and out a lot, and that could result in the opportunity for more crime, a decrease in privacy for the neighbors. So that's another concern. We had a similar property development be proposed a few years ago, and that was condos. So that was a little bit more comfortable because we knew that those were going to be high-end condos where people are going to be settling for a longer period of time. But the presence of apartments makes me a little wary that it's going to be, more of a transient population base. So I respectfully request that you please reconsider the allowance of such an overabundance of apartments in such a tiny little space and the parking spaces that will be required to support the build. Thank you. Yes.
Because you spoke to your objection of the density issue.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you don't object to any of the other variance requests.
Correct.
But then I kind of got the sense that you objected to the project as a whole, and really, if you're looking at the density variance that request that's before us, we're talking a difference between 20 versus 26 units. So
Yes.
it's the overage of 6.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to determine is it the additional 6 units, which would be, considering they're fully occupied, 11 people, or is it everybody?
I mean, everything as a whole. I mean, if I can only object to the additional increase, I'm going to object to that, but I do object to the entirety of the project.
That's not before
Right.
us, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Ed Marecki. I'm at 4765 Sheridan Drive. One of the characteristics of the neighborhood, all the way from, let's say, the 290 to Mill Street, pretty much even as far as Young's, the properties there are single-family and condos. I think the character of the neighborhood is going to change drastically. And the entire character of the neighborhood is going to change drastically by putting in apartments at this location. So I'm objecting to the type of property that's going in there, as opposed to being either single-family residence or condos. Initially, that property was rezoned for condos. Okay, I believe it was a I've been there for 30 years. There was a single-family home there. That was demolished, and that property was rezoned for condos. And now, since it was rezoned for condos, now they're trying to put in apartments. And I think it should be taken back to single-family residence. I mean, since it was, the purpose of it was for condominiums, not for apartments. So that's basically what I wanted to say. So it'll change the entire character of the neighborhood. It's a pretty nice neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Just remember to say your name and address into the microphone and make sure it's written down, please.
My name is Mark DeJory. This is Christine DeJory. We are the neighbors directly to the west of the proposed development there.
So would that be 4785 Sheridan?
That's us. So we're totally unprepared here. We were out of town until yesterday. Someone from the RAS company was nice enough to put non-postage envelope in our mailbox yesterday, which we got home last night. And we're totally unprepared for this. We were not notified from the town. Our two neighbors got notification through the town on May 4th. We had no idea. Our neighbor was nice enough to tell us on Sunday night while we were away that this was going to happen. So we're totally unprepared for this. The sold sign went up on, if it was 2 weeks ago, it was it was a short period of time. We didn't realize that all of this happened. We didn't have any time to prepare for this. We don't have a lawyer. If we had an opportunity to get a lawyer and lawyer up to debate this issue, we'd be more prepared for it. But all that said, the town does setbacks for a specific reason. And they want to cut the setback by 50%. That's significant. If every rule that the town had, somebody would come and request a 50% reduction in the setback or whatever the rules are for the town, why do we bother having rules in the first place? We should just say, let someone do what they want to do as long as they're able to afford a lawyer and they have the money to do it. Is this meeting that we're in right now, is this our only opportunity to speak on this in front of the board?
So this is your opportunity to speak on the variances that are before this board, and then there will be a review by the planning board for the, later on. So
Okay, so I understand
what
that-
we're discussing today are the requests for setbacks and unit quantity.
Okay, so I understand the process. If this part of it goes through, then it goes to the next stage. But if this part doesn't go through, they have to, that's how the process works. Again, I'm unprepared for this.
So if they could go forward with a different plan that would not have these variances that are before us today.
Okay, well, with that said, then, the setback is a huge thing for us. Obviously, the way that the buildings are gonna be constructed, our house is right there, so when that building's there, it blocks our eastern view of everything on that side. A 6-foot fence on a 2.5 or whatever the story building is over there is, you know, that's gonna be intrusive right in our backyard. You can see where the building is, and that's, I don't have a pointer here, so I'm sure you can see what I'm talking about. That's our kitchen, that's our living space towards the back, and then we have a patio behind there. It's, you know, it's gonna be intrusive on that side, not to mention the amount of apartments or people that are gonna be in the apartments. So that's another, I think that's another variance that they're looking for. They wanna go from, I think it's 20 to 25 or something like that. I know we can't dictate that because that's the rules of the town, but if it has to, we'd like to keep it as minimal as possible. And I don't know about 6-foot fence and some greenery. I mean, it's not going to be enough to block the view there. So I wish I was better prepared in front of the panel here to tell you how much we're disappointed in the way that this was presented. And I'd like to know why the town never sent us any notification. Our neighbors got it, and we didn't get anything?
So I believe the process is that you would have received a notification. I don't think anyone here on the board can speak to why that didn't happen, but you should have been notified.
Okay. Well, I wish I had more time to prepare for this, and does anyone have any questions for us? We've lived there about 15 years. Well, we understand that, you know, it's a unique piece of property, valuable piece of property. Somebody eventually is gonna come along and put something there. But I don't think this particular project is the one to fit in that spot. And we can't really discuss that at this time. The only thing we can tell you is about our setback should not be granted. Our neighbor had mentioned the fact about the sight line when you're driving down Sheridan Drive. Speed limit's 45. Nobody goes 45 down Sheridan. And if you look to your left, traffic's clear. You look to your right, traffic's clear. You start pulling out, somebody's going 60 miles an hour. So that setback isn't nearly enough view coming from the, let's see, that would be east, going east down Sheridan. So, thank you for your
you.
time, folks. Thanks.
Do you have a question, Ron?
I have a suggestion that maybe this should be adjourned, giving the applicant time to work with the neighbors, and also consider condos instead of rental. Because what I'm hearing here is there's an issue concerning rental, and there's a concern regarding the neighbors. And perhaps adjourning and working those things out might be the way to go.
Before we do that, can I ask what the target?
Yeah, sure.
What are the target residents here? Because I'm not sure I'm sold on the transiency argument, given the location and probably what we're looking at in terms of requests.
Right, so in terms of, I do want to know, condos aren't feasible at this particular location, and I believe one of the neighbors mentioned it. There was a condominium project that was previously approved here. I don't believe it ever got off the ground. Mr. Savarino wasn't involved with that in any way whatsoever. But if we did these similar units and made them condo, we're looking at price points of $400,000 and up. It's just the numbers are very challenging these days. In terms of the demographics, a couple demographics. Number one, based on past experience, and there's only 4 of them, we found that those townhomes are typically attracted to people that want to downsize in the town of Amherst. They live nearby. They're probably going to be people that have some affiliation with the country club next door. They want to stay in Amherst. They may leave during the winter. They no longer want responsibility for ownership. And then in terms of the bigger building, which includes 5 one-bedroom units, it's really a mix. But I would note, this is not being marketed for students. It's not that type of layout. It's not that type of product. And in terms of the price points, and a lot of this is driven by how expensive construction has become, we're probably looking at, for the one bedrooms, right, Rob, starting at $1,600. $2 a square foot. So I mean, literally, we could have rents going from slightly less than $2,000 all the way up to close to $3,000. So these are going to be upscale in recognition neighborhood. I do want to note the neighbor who is here this evening, who only recently became aware. Rob did drop off a letter. I believe it was May 7th. I know you were out of town. May 6th. I know they were out of town, but we would welcome the opportunity to work with them.
Excuse the interruption. You said dropped off a letter in my mailbox?
Yeah.
The reason why I dropped it off is I wanted to make an attempt to ring the doorbell because I didn't have a way to get a hold of my phone.
Okay, what, can we just quit with the back and forth?
Yeah, I just want to note, we made the effort. It's okay.
Yep.
He was out of town, him and his wife. That's okay. And then finally, I just want to make sure it's clear because, again, he's seen it for the first time. None of the setbacks pertain to that side of the property. We're deliberately pushing this as close as we can to that National Grid utility corridor. That has a width of 100 feet. So, you know, those setback variances on the east side will not be bothersome to anyone whatsoever. So I hope that answers your question.
Could you give us a counterfactual of what you would be allowed to build on there without any variances?
Right, so without any variances, we'd most likely get rid of the townhome building with those attached garages, and we would proceed with a 20-unit building consisting of all 2 bedrooms. What we're asking for is 26 units, but 5 of those are 1-bedroom units. So it's not 26 2-bedroom units, it's 21 2-bedroom units and 5 1-bedroom units. I would also note that if we wanted to make bigger units, we could actually leave this building exactly the same, leave the townhome building, and just modify the floor plans and make the units bigger. It's not our goal. We think these unit types work. They align with our price points, but we could do that. It would literally be no change to the plans whatsoever.
Question regarding the condo versus apartments. Is the lack of feasibility solely due to the $400,000?
It's a difficult price point, and as you have someone on this board who's an expert on this, you know, if you start that type of project, you have to finish it. So the concern would be, you know, that's a lot of risk that Mr. Savarino, number one, would be difficult to undertake, and number two, he'd have to get a lender completely comfortable with that. And I do want to note, and I understand how some of the neighbors don't understand this, the zoning MFR5 is not limited to condos. You know, the zoning that's in place, and Mr. Savarino had nothing to do with that zoning being in place, you know, does allow multifamily for lease as well. And we would welcome the opportunity, and Rob's done this again and again, to talk to the neighbors. It sounds like your inclination is not to vote this evening. So if that is your inclination, we will take the opportunity to do that, especially the adjoining property owner who only recently became aware of the project.
I have another comment. I'm going to argue this now. I can't see why these cannot be condos. If you want to go up to Main Street, to Graythorne and see what's going on up there, selling for $600,000 or more on Main Street, I can't understand why this can't be. Or maybe it's just a matter of taking a look at it and seeing if it can be done.
Sure, but it's really a question of numbers of condos.
I understand.
Right, so I can't, and I agree, I studied the Graythorne project. I'm involved in a project across the street, which is condos.
Okay,
because I can get 22 of them there, right? That's 5 acres. Here, what can you get there? It's just the land costs alone and the site and the 15-foot drop slope would prevent any type of feasibility at all.
And we think the best evidence of that is the other individual got all the way through the process, got site plan approval, and it never happened. But let us give it some thought. We'll be back again.
I think it can be done. I think it can be done.
let-
And
let
that
us-
would solve the issue of the transiency.
Yeah, but the transient issue, I think, again, and Rob would welcome the opportunity, if you visit the project he's involved with on North Forest, it's a much bigger project. You're not going to see any issues. It's immaculately maintained. And if anyone on the board or any of the residents want to go visit it, not the exact same thing because it's a bigger project, but I think you'll see 10 years into it, it's as good as day one.
Is that the John Muir?
Yeah, yeah, and the Mirror Lake is directly behind. Yep.
All right. We're not going to vote on this today. We're not going to take any action on this today, so save your breath.
And the other thing I want to note, if the board's inclination, again,
Yeah,
we want,
we're gonna adjourn this
keep
tonight.
the hearing open. That's
Yeah.
what we were going to say. If you want to keep the hearing open, that's
Can I
it.
get do we got to make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, move to adjourn.
Second, but
Moved and seconded, all in favor of adjourn? Aye. Any opposed?
we're keeping the hearing open.
Right.
Yep.
And I would ask the residents that are in attendance, if you could give us your contact information and email addresses, we'll share everything with you.
All right, thank you. Now we're on the last item of today's agenda, 6812 Main Street.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, 6812 Main Street LLC, care of Paul Bliss. We're here this evening in connection with area variances for the 5 parcels located at 6812 through 6832 Main Street and 2937 Terracin. You've seen this project twice previously, both during your December meetings and your February meeting. The size of the site is 2.2 acres. It's here, highlighted in blue. Directly next door are Mr. Bliss's 2 mixed-use projects at 6770 and 6790 Main Street. And then most of you have probably noticed the mixed-use project that's being constructed at 6842 Main Street, directly behind the plaza at the intersection of Transit and Main. Next slide. Showing an aerial photograph. Again, the mixed-use buildings previously completed. Here's where the one's being constructed. And then we have Tennyson Terrace located on both sides. Next slide. This is the plaza that's there today. I think we can all agree it's outdated and probably time to start over. I would note Mr. Bliss has actually been interested in this property for at least a decade and never went on the market. The property owner actually reached out to him and said they'd be interested in selling it to him. So it never made the market. There is a copy of the survey showing that existing building. I would note with respect to the existing site, a lot of aspects don't comply with code. You have pavement all the way up to Main Street, parking lot dimensions, building setbacks, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. So one of the conditions, and I believe it was I can't remember if it was Mr. Bray or Mr. Schubert's request, I believe it was Mr. Bray, during the meeting that we're here in December, as you recall, the northernmost of the parcels is located at 37 Tennyson Terrace, and you asked if we would be willing to subject that to a deed restriction to ensure there would not be any development on it in the future. It's got a width of 90 feet. So we did comply with that condition that you imposed and that declaration of restrictions after it was reviewed by the town attorney's office. And Mr. Ulatowski was recorded at the Erie County Clerk's office on March 28th. So one of these 5 parcels will be green space. No buildings, no parking lots, no driveways. Next slide. Copy of the site plan, just to put that back in perspective. The building is 4 stories and 5 stories, located up along Main Street, similar to the setback of the adjacent buildings located at 6770 and 6790 Main Street. We're showing 117 parking spaces. The MFR 5 and GB zoning boundary is located here and actually carries across the street. I've mentioned the fact of the green space, and we're also showing some garages here with high impact screening. Next slide. So what are the variances that we're here for this evening? Number 1, setback from the MFR 5 zoning boundary. You granted a variance previously, but to provide a better area for commercial tenants and residential tenants where they can get inside the building and feel a little bit more protected, both in terms of inclement weather and security, we added that little tiny bump out. That triggered a variance where you previously allowed 110 feet, we're now at 97 feet. So that's the only change. I would note If you measure that closest part of that building all the way to the nearest boundary of a single-family home, it's at 323 feet, so more than a football field. Next slide. Area variance number 2 pertains to a covered walkway on the front side of the building. This is a Main Street frontage. None of the other mixed-use buildings that Mr. Bliss has built in this area include that covered walkway. As you'll see, he does have the decorative canopies. It would be inconsistent with the appearance we're promoting. It's also important to note that that provision of the zoning code doesn't contemplate primary access to this building's on the back, right? The parking lot's on the back. This is a new way of doing things. Green space along the front, parking along the back. So really, 95 to 100% of the residents and commercial tenants are going to generally access this from the back. And the only way I know that is because I'm at Mr. Bliss's buildings at 6770 and 6790 at least once a week. And then area variance number 3 pertains to blank wall area. Pursuant to section 203486C of the zoning code, the maximum allowed horizontal is 20 feet and the maximum vertical is 30 feet. So I'm going to walk you through the elevations and just point out this is a very nice building with diverse materials, but there are a couple of examples, relatively small, where the blank wall area here is too tall. Next slide. On the southern elevation, could you go back? I'm sorry. That was the northern elevation, so that's actually the back side. Southern elevation, next slide. Here, here, and here. Next slide. And then finally on the sides, this is the east elevation, meaning it will face transit here. And then on the west elevation, here. And again, we're breaking up this building. It has a lot of vertical relief, horizontal relief, and does have diverse materials, very similar to the 2 buildings next door. So I think there's ample justification for that variance as well. Next slide. These are the color renderings. So just to put everything in context, this would be the proposed building here, closest to the intersection of Main and Transit. Next slide. And that's looking back the other way towards the west. Again, here's the building. You can see we're really trying to make this so it's similar to the building materials that have already been utilized. Next slide. Next slide. So obviously governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria. Quickly, the benefits are clear, will allow us to proceed with the development of this mixed-use redevelopment project in accordance with the current layout. Again, building up along the front, parking in the rear, ample green space, 90 feet dedicated as permanent open space, never to be developed. So the benefits are clear. We don't think there are any detriments. I would note the building height is permitted as of right in the existing GB zoning classification. And the 5 criteria, we think it's clear that granting the requested relief will not result in undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. We also think it's clear that there is no feasible alternative that would eliminate the need for the requested area variances. Ultimately, if you denied the setback variance from an artificial internal zoning boundary, we'd get rid of that bump out, but I think that bump out is a nice feature. Next slide. Whether the requested area variances are substantial, and again, key inquiry is harm. We don't think any harm will result. Whether proposed variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. I would note twice previously, you've issued negative declarations. We have filed a site plan application, fully engineered plans. That is pending before the planning board on Thursday evening. We've talked about the building appearance and the high quality mixture of materials that will be utilized. And then finally, we do have recognition of the fact of the site being zone GB and MFR 5. So I guess it is a self-created difficulty. But with that being said, we think the balancing test itself and 4 of the 5 criteria provide you with more than ample justification for the granting of the requested relief. And with that being said, I would ask that you issue a negative declaration and approve the requested 3 area variances, and welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Could you go over one more time quickly the first variance in regards to the building height?
Yeah, so this blue line represents the internal zoning boundary. Everything from here to the Main Street, which is south, is zone GB. Everything from here to the north, consistent with the remainder of Tennyson Terrace, is zone MFR 5. So there's a provision in the zoning code that basically says when you have a building, I believe it's more than 30 feet, Dan? Your setback to the zoning boundary has to be 3 times building height. And what we're showing there is a setback of 97.17 feet. You previously granted a variance to allow 110.7 feet because we're all the way 326 feet from the property line. And the only reason we need that additional relief is that bump out. That bump out wasn't shown on the plans we presented to you during your meetings in December and February. It was an afterthought that Mr. Bliss added because he thinks it's a nice amenity for the commercial tenants and the residential tenants to have that little dedicated area.
And what is the building height?
The building height is slightly less than 65 feet to the peak.
But the variance, just want to be clear on this, only has to do with the amount of space between the building and that line.
Blue line.
Not the actual height of the building, just that and the line. And because there is all that space between that line and actual
That's correct.
properties, you're asking for that variance.
For that variance. And again, one of the things that came up when we were here in December was, hey, if you're representing, you're not going to put anything here. Are you willing to abide by that permanently? And we are, and we have.
All right, thank you. Does any member of the board have a question? All right, is anyone here in the audience here to speak on this item?
Good evening. I'm Kathleen McHugh. I live at 64 Tennyson Terrace. I'm shocked about the 5 stories, but that's not why I'm here. And I'm glad that he left this picture up. Because if you look above the blue line and you see that big black arrow come to that little curve that's into the parking lot, there's actually a driveway he is putting in for that huge building that's on backland between Transit Road and Tennyson Terrace. When Mr. Bliss was building that, I specifically asked how people would get in and out of there, seeing as it was on backland. He said, and if you look, I gave you a petition signed by 55 of our neighbors. Your letter didn't arrive until Friday. I believe it was written on May 4th on a Saturday, but it wasn't delivered by the Postal Service until last Friday on the 10th. So it didn't give me much time to visit too many neighbors, but I did get 55 signatures yesterday and today. The issue is that Mr. Bliss is using that little curve there as a driveway to come out of that big building that is 61 apartments, 6 townhouses, and 7,500 square feet of commercial space. So my argument is that that driveway needs to be eliminated to cut through that parking lot that is adding 2 driveways to Tennyson Terrace. Only, I don't know how many feet that is to Main Street, but it's directly across where he already added 2 driveways.
So there's no item before this board today having to do with the driveway. What we're talking about today are 3 other variances, one related to the distance from the district line, the second having to do with the covered pedestrian walkway, and the third having to do with the blank wall length. So there's nothing we could do today on that item you're discussing regarding the throughway, the driveway.
Okay, so when would that be discussed?
That would be Thursday evening, man.
Oh,
This
at the
project is
planning
before
board.
the planning board, in
Okay,
which
I plan on
we would
being there
encourage
as
you to
well, and
participate.
maybe I'll have more than 55 signatures by that time. I was a little disappointed that it took so long for your letter to get to us. It didn't give us a whole lot of time to do anything about it with our neighbors, but I believe my neighbor Jane Dietz was already here this evening. So, okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And the work you do for our town.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item?
Hi, I'm Jane Dietz. I'm here with my husband Kenneth. We live at 61 Tennyson Terrace. And we're very surprised at how high this next building is going. Our property butts up, the back end of our property butts up literally feet from his townhouses. And behind the townhouses is that huge 4-story apartment building. So we have no privacy. Currently, there's no fence there. We have no safety, security.
Could you let us know your address, and can we get a view of that on 61 Tennyson?
61 Tennyson Terrace. I'd also like to bring up the fact that they're taking away all our trees. Besides building these big buildings, we have the reason we bought the home on this street was because of the beautiful trees. And putting up a blank wall and a covered, walkway, it means nothing to us. That isn't the reason why we live on this street. You're changing the whole appearance of our neighborhood. This will also tear down the building at 37 Tennyson Terrace, which is like three doors down from us. It's a house. It's a little Cape Cod. They'll be tearing that down.
So where is your house in?
You're heading north down Tennyson Terrace. We're 61. It's a little white. I don't know how to do the pointer. We're 61. Yeah. So we are literally getting boxed in. Trees taken away. I totally, both of us, oppose having this new development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to the, is anyone else here to speak on this item? All right, go ahead.
So first of all, I want to make sure it's clear again. The planning board will be holding a public hearing on this on Thursday at 6:30 at this exact same location. Can you go back to the card plan, James? There we go. So in terms of the layout itself, again, I want to reiterate, 37 Tennyson, there is a house there. It will be coming down, but it will be green space. So that was done with the understanding that obviously there are residences on Tennyson, including the second speaker that spoke. We are also showing, although it's not in front of you, a cross-access to that mixed-use project. We've not yet received that permission, so we're working on that as well. In terms of what's permitted or what's proposed in the building height, it is zone GB. I believe it's been zoned that since 1976, so it's nearly 50 years. We are proposing a building that is permitted in the GB zoning, a mixed-use building that will be partially 4 stories and partially 5 stories. We have ample parking. I understand why some neighbors would probably prefer that nothing occur or something different, but this property is selling that property. We purchased it, and we think we've come up with something that is compatible with what's previous.
May I interrupt? Where's 61?
61 would be.
Because you have 37 is yours.
Yeah, so
So what would be
61
what is between 37 and 61?
I think 61 would be here. Is there 2 houses between you and? 3 houses intervening.
So there are you're saying there are 3 houses between your project
Yeah.
and 61?
I believe this is their house. I don't want to speak for them, but this is their house. And we're way up here with the building.
That's important.
And what they were referencing, and they're accurate, is that mixed use, this project is directly behind them.
Right.
One that's not in front of you, but that is, it's close to where they
It's
are.
in their backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if they want to give me their contact information, we can certainly see if there's anything we can do to enhance screening, even though that's unrelated.
But
Gentlemen in the back, it's getting very difficult to hear up here.
so the 3 variances today have to only do with the property on Main Street though, correct? Nothing on the other property?
Nothing, no. Only literally from here to here. And again, the house will be green space.
All right, so we had a lot of conversation on everything other than the 3 requested variances. Does anyone on we'll close the public hearing. Does anyone on the board have a comment or want to make a motion on these requested variances? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, we have to do a negative deck, so could I get a motion on the negative deck? Member Schubert made the motion. Second by Member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. All right. Do we have any comments or motions on the resolution before us?
Well, to keep it moving, I'll move to approve the variances.
Motion by Member Schubert. Second by Member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passed 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. That was the last item on today's agenda. Could we get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion by Member Phillips, second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. That's 5-0. Thank you.